Alright, welcome back to the PHP 101 series. We're going to continue our discussion on object-oriented programming. In this video we're going to talk about something called static. So let's jump right in. What I want to do is go ahead and go down to the inheritance file and duplicate that. And let's just call that static. Alright, so now we still have our house and our fancy house here. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about something, because what I've told you so far is that basically a class is like a blueprint, and these properties don't actually really exist on the class itself. These properties and methods are actually generated or created in the object when you instantiate them. So those properties actually are in the object, and also the methods are in the object. Okay, these are just blueprints. But there are some times when you might, let's for example say let's say we have these blueprints for a house and a fancy house, and I might want to keep track of, this is kind of a weird example, but I might want to keep track of how many houses have been created from these classes. And so a good place I could do that, let's imagine I was a general contractor and I had a set of floor plans with me, and I just on the back just wrote some notes, and I put a check mark, or a tally, every time I created a new house. And then like 20 years down the road, say I was just like a factory pumping out these houses, I could go back and say, well, how many of these houses off of this blueprint have I actually built? Okay, well, we can do that sort of thing with a static property here. So what I want to do is, in the house class here, let's just create a new static property. Okay, so we're going to say is public static, and then we're going to say count, and we'll set that equal to 0. And then in the constructor, what I want to do is go down here and I want to say self count. We'll say self count is equal to self, you know what, we'll just do self count plus plus. Okay, alright, so now let's go ahead and go to our static script here, and now when these are instantiated, let's see if they show here. Door color, temp, hot water, garage, pool lights, pool. Self count is equal, well, let's do this. Let's do echo self count. And so what has happened is this self count now has echoed twice, because we have instantiated this 2 times. So you can see here, when we did this, since this is a constructor, it's echoing that count. So what we can do now is we can say self count, and then what we can do is say that equals self count plus 1. Okay, so now let's go ahead and refresh, and let's see down here. What I want to do is, outside of these classes, let's go ahead and just echo out and the way we access this is we can say house colon colon count. Okay, and then I'm going to also just add a break tag to that right here. So let's go ahead now and refresh. Constant count, I'm sorry, that is actually, you have to use a $sign for that. So refresh now, and now you can see that it's printing 2 there. So why is that printing 2? Well, it's printing 2 because it's keeping track of this here. And I can also, let's see, if I take this and let's just copy this, I'm going to put it in between these instantiations and above it here. And now let's see what happens. Well, now, before any of them are instantiated, it's 0. We echo that. We instantiate the first house, and then it's equal to 1. And we instantiate the second, and now it's equal to 2. What's important to know about a static property is that this static property could be accessed even if we didn't instantiate a class. And that can't be said for the rest of these. So let me show you what I mean. Let's go down here and let's just, I'm going to get rid of a lot of this stuff here just to clean some stuff up. And let's just get rid of this and get rid of this. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to comment out the lines that instantiate those classes. And now you can see that it is printing 0 each time. It's only printing 0. See, I can change this. I can set this value to 56, and it will say 56 3 times because nothing's changing that. But it's accessible even if I haven't instantiated an object. But if I try to do the same thing, let's just, I'm going to copy this line just to show you this will be a problem. Instead of echoing house count, what I want to do is I want to echo another one. So let's just try to echo the temp, like this. Well, this is going to give us a fatal error. And that is because you can't access these properties inside of the class itself. You can only do that with a static property. And so to access, if you look here, we are not using the house2 static thing, which we could if these were instantiated. So let's try that. Let's just see if that works. And I'm going to say, let's do house2, and then I'm going to copy this, and in the line below it, we're going to do house. Like that. And now you can see that both of those two lines ended up being 58. And that's because whether I access it from an instantiated object or I access it directly, these are still pointing to the same exact property, which is static, and it actually lives on the class, unlike the other properties which live on the object. Okay, so that is static. Static is shared among the class and its objects and its extended children. Okay, so that's one use case that you would use a static property. But now let's talk about one more thing. Let's talk about static methods. So let's say we had a blueprint, and there was a chart of like figuring out how many shingles something would need, right? And let's just, I don't know, let's just create something like this. So what I could do is I could say public static function needed shingles. Okay. Well, what I could do is I could pass in like the roof size or the size of the house. I'll just say 45. Let's say so length, and then the next one would be width. Okay. So we have the length and the width of the house. So then what we could do is we could say, and I know these numbers aren't going to be correct if you're a roofer or whatever, but let's just say we could find our square foot. So we do square foot is equal to length times width. Okay, and then what we can do is say for our shingles, let's say we want to know how many bundles to get. Let's say that one bundle does I don't know, so 3 foot by 1 foot, 3, that's 3 times 12. So let's say 36 square foot. So we'll say bundles is equal to square foot divided by 36. Okay, and then I'll return bundles. Okay, so the reason I might do this is because before I even build a house, I need to know what the shingles are needed. So I can store this little function or method on the blueprint just to access it, or on the class, and I can access this before I even instantiate this. So let me show you what I mean. In the code here, before I instantiate house 1 or house 2, I can actually echo, and we'll say house, and you access the same thing, the static method the same way with 2 colons, and then what we're going to say is needed shingles, and then we're going to pass in 30 by 15. Okay, so 30 by 15, and if I refresh now, we can see that we need 12.556. So we would need 12 and a half bundles to cover that. Okay, so this is happening on a method that is stored on the class, not inside of an instantiated object. Alright, so one use case in the real world that you would use this for is, let's say I have a class that has a bunch of methods that are related to my user object. So I have a logged in user, and there's all kinds of methods on there to where this user needs to be instantiated. So say log in. Well, I have to build the user object and then log them in. But I might have a function on there where I just want to return something like, or I want to say I wanted to hash a password or something like that. Well, I can create a static method, and then I can just pass a string into that, and I could actually do that password hash from anywhere. So if anywhere else besides that user object I just want to print some sort of hash or get some sort of hash, I could use that same method. So it's a way, like if you have a related function and you just don't want to put it somewhere, say in a helpers file somewhere, and you want to organize it with the class because it makes the most sense to live with that class, then you can put that as a static method in your class. Okay, so that's the main thing that you need to understand, is that static properties and static methods do not need to have an instantiated object from those classes to use them. They are freely available to you. Now, when you use a static property, this lives on the class and not on the objects. So when it changes, no matter where you access it from, it's going to be the same value. That's also important to know, because if any of your objects manipulate that, it's going to change for all of them. It's a way to share some sort of property between all of your objects. And the same thing with a method. It doesn't need to be instantiated to use it. You can just call it from the class. Okay, so it can just be like this needed shingles thing. Well, this wouldn't make sense to throw this needed shingles into a users or a person class. It makes more sense to have a needed shingles, since it has to do with a house, in this house class. Okay, and all this is just kind of like silly illustrations that don't really match up to real world things, but I'm trying to make this as simple as possible with these analogies. Okay, so just as a recap, what I want you to understand is to access a static property, you use the class name and then a colon, and then you use the $, and then you access the property. Okay, you can also access the property from an instantiated object by calling that object and then colon, but that will be the same value as if you've done it from the class directly. So these two right here will produce the same results. So same results for the next 2 lines of code. All right. For a method, you call it like a method with parentheses, but you use the double colon if it's static. Okay. Now, if you don't quite understand static yet, that's fine. I just wanted to show you what it is in case you saw a syntax like this in some code and needed to know what it is, or if you saw the keyword static. Just trying to familiarize you with these concepts right now in this PHP crash course, this 101 course. And you'll learn as you start to program with these things when a good time would be to use these. It'll kind of just stand out to you. So just don't forget these and know they're in your tool belt, and you will see these sometimes. Alright, well with that, we're going to move on with our discussion. So in the next video, we're probably going to go ahead and start talking about a little more of an advanced topic called interfaces. So with that, guys, I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification. See you in the next video.